No Rest for the Wicked is back with a huge update, adding gameplay improvements and tons of new content into the game for the first time since July of 2024. Now, if you haven't heard of this game, it was kind of first of its time when it initially released in early access by Moon Studios. Same studio that made Ori and the Blind Forest, so you already know the art direction here is impeccable with this studio in general, but I say it was the first of its time because it was kind of the first ARPG-like and top-down Souls-like game that we have had. But in addition to that top-down look, it also blended things like survival elements, where you could get wood and ore and then go back to your city and get different shortcuts, or build up your city and build different things within your city and go craft, etc. It even had a unique mechanic where you could reset a zone completely and go back into that zone so you could get more of these things or fight more of these monsters for more XP, etc. However, similar to other Souls-like games, similar to Lords of the Fallen, for example, it was one that I just didn't mesh with a lot of the systems that they added into the game. I thought they honestly took away from the core experience and frustrated me more than they did actually allow me to have fun. Needing to farm so much wood and ore for certain things in the town and then having to wait actual timers for these things to be done was so frustrating, and I didn't feel like it respected my time, especially for an early access game. The vendors were very spread out, far away from your storage, all the way at the top of this tower within the safe area in general, and on top of this, to go and buy items or to go and upgrade things within your city, you needed all of that on your person. It couldn't be sitting in your storage box. So if you didn't have that shortcut, like I mentioned, the run back time was far to your storage, but you actually had to have that on your person, and you maxed out your inventory and weight so fast that you were continuously running back and forth because you couldn't keep those items and those materials on your person at all times. Now, they did update this. You can craft and buy and do things like that from your storage, but they didn't have that at launch, and it was extremely frustrating, but I do appreciate that update. But since then, they have made other updates to the game. They've kept working on the game to try to get it to the best it could be, and the last update was relatively great. It was pretty resoundingly positive from most of the people that played the game, and this update was the Crucible. Now, the Crucible was there at launch. It was at the end game. It was this kind of repeatable arena that you could do. However, this was not very fleshed out when the game first came out. But in this update, they tripled the number of encounters that you could find in here. They introduced a whole new art theme. They added a brand new vendor that could get you things like exalted weapons. It also introduced a new gameplay system to the Crucible in general called Echoes that made it more of like a rogue-like experience. In addition to this, they added a new enemy faction called the Gloam. They added other new features and content with extended regions that you couldn't necessarily go to in the initial game. They added combat enhancements like freezing and shattering, ripping and tearing. They added stray animals into the game. They added performance updates into the game. This was a very big update, and honestly, it was the best the game had been, in addition with those other smaller updates that added quality of life improvements that the game has been in up into that point. But then a lot of nothing. There was no big updates for over 10 months. Almost an entire year, but now the game is back with their most recent enormous update called The Breach. Now, quick side note, something else big that happened, not specifically to the game, but to the studio within the last 10 months, Moon Studios has gone fully independent and secured publishing rights for this game, so that is something to note in regards to why this might have taken a long time. But as I said, this update is huge, so huge that it honestly is working like a season for ARPGs in regards to needing to start a brand new character to experience this content, and although I know that is a little bit frustrating for some people, I think that's definitely the way they need to go here for players to experience all of the different updates they've made to everything in the game, not just the new content that they have added in here. I myself definitely would start a new character if I was playing this game in general, because I haven't played it since launch, which was almost 2 years or a year and a half ago at this point. The first big thing they added was new zones. The first new zone is called the Lowland Meadows, and this is a pretty colorful area with a lot of flowers, plants, etc., but it is infected by the plague, and so are its enemies. Now, the next zone is going to be called the Marin Woods, which in the name, it's obviously going to be a woodland area. It's going to be a forest area that is affected by the blight. But within these two new areas, you're going to have 4 new campaign bosses, 9 new plague bosses, and 2 new enemy factions to fight. And in addition to this, they are also updating existing areas with new areas to explore, as well as secrets to uncover within those areas specifically. They are also adding another safe area into the game called Marin Village. As you guys might know if you played the game, the big one is called Sacrament. This is the one where you can upgrade it, own a house in, your storage is going to be in there, you can craft things, a ton of different vendors, etc. This one is going to be different. The Marin Village is more going to be for buying rare upgrade materials and things like that. You're not going to be able to own a house or do any of that stuff in there, but it is a safe area for you to go in and explore and buy from different vendors. Now, moving on here, they also added 2 new weapon types called gauntlets and wands and completely changed how shields work, adding something to the game called poise. So starting off with gauntlets, they're kind of what you expect, very fast-paced, up-close martial art weapons. The wands are going to obviously offer one-handed spell casting options that you can actually also use with a shield. And then getting to the shield, they have been reworked, as I mentioned, with that poise bar. No longer are they going to be used with stamina and required to use stamina to block. A stagger bar will fill as you block, and once this is full, it'll break what they call poise. So it's going to be separate from stamina here, but this is hopefully aiming to give you a little bit more room with that stamina management, so where you can block something and then also dodge, and that uses 2 different resources. I do think this is a good change, but I'm eager to actually see how it works out in totality when I play the game. Now, moving on from the weapons, they also introduced a new system that's kind of like a league mechanic that works very similar to Health Tides from Diablo 4 called the Pestilence system. And I'm not going to shit on Diablo 4, but PTSD for the Health Tides is killing me right now. But it's going to look almost identical on the map. Instead of being red in Diablo 4, it's going to be purple. And as you enter this zone, there are going to be variant enemies that you might have fought previously that are now infected or affected by this pestilence area. Now, when you go in there, you're going to see a bar, and the more you kill these enemies, the more this bar is going to decrease. Once it decreases fully, you'll be able to fight the boss. Now, this boss is also a variant of a boss you might have fought previously. Now, there is an added factor here, and that is these things called torn resources. Torn resources can be burned, and you can find these by fighting different bosses or enemies within the area, and once you burn these, the area is actually going to increase in difficulty and offer stronger rewards. So you have kind of a high risk, high reward factor. If you make it too strong, then you're going to die and lose all of your stuff. But if you make it just the perfect amount, you might get some very beneficial upgrades for your character. This system honestly seems very interesting to me. I think it's going to work a lot better in a Souls-like game than it would in something like Diablo 4, which you're just crushing the enemies so fast and really using it as a leveling up experience, at least in this day and age, from what I know of Diablo 4, so I'm excited to try this out. But moving on here, something I definitely think was sorely needed were enormous changes to the itemization. Now, all of the items in the game are going to drop based on your character level, and it's going to scale that way throughout the game, where previously, all of these items would be locked to specific zones. So you could find something at the start of the game that was really good for your character stat-wise or whatever, but at the end of the game, it was just not very good for you because they were so low. But regardless, you could have used that item later on in the game if it just dropped for you later on and had better stats to begin with, and that's something that hopefully will be able to happen now with items from the early game being able to drop in late game areas as well that do scale with your character. You can also now add or re-roll affixes using Fallen Embers, which is a relatively rare resource in the game. They even added a brand new rarity into the game called Masterwork, which is basically adding and socketing a 4th gem into a common item. In my opinion, these are all good changes because you're going to have more build variety going throughout the entire game, being able to use early game weapons later on in the game that do scale to your level. You're going to be able to kind of decrease the level of RNG that you have here by adding and re-rolling affixes as well as the Mastercraft rarity. So I think all of this is definitely good in regards to additions to the game. They changed the way food works in the game. Previously, you'd have a timer every time you use a food item before you can use one again. Now, you just have a limit of how many food items you can use within combat to heal yourself. Another great change in my opinion. Now, moving on, another huge addition to the game. Hardcore mode, something every single ARPG needs in my opinion to survive, especially if you're going to be doing fresh starts to experience new content like you need to do for The Breach. And this works exactly like a hardcore mode normally works, where you can make a hardcore character that is separate from a standard character, and once that character dies, GG's, your hardcore run's over. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about some quality of life improvements that they made to the game that directly address some of the issues I talked about at the start of this video. Now, something I didn't talk about at the start of this video is back in the day, up until really this update, your storage had the same stack sizes as your character, which is so dumb, it's ridiculous. Your character would maybe have a stack of 10 of an item. Well, your storage couldn't go up higher than that either. So to put 40 of that item in your storage, it took up 4 different slots. Now it is 99 of every item in your storage for a stack size, even though your inventory will remain the same stack sizes as it used to be. But in general, this is huge. You used to have to be getting rid of materials that you wanted to put other materials in there that you needed just because the stack sizes were so small, and it was just ridiculously annoying, and I cannot believe they didn't have this changed earlier. But thank you for making this change. Now, on top of this, a huge change to quality of life here is the addition to the Whisper Stone. Now that is placeable in any property that you own. So your house, for example, in the main city of Sanctuary. These stones are now going to allow you to directly fast travel to your storage locations, removing any need to return to Sacrament first just to deposit items, which you would be doing constantly. They also did address wait timers that I talked about at the start of this video, where if you upgrade your workers, you'll have to wait less time, but please just take this out of the game. Nobody wants mobile game wait timers in a game that you're paying for. It's ridiculous. All in all, these updates are pretty damn incredible, especially kind of out of nowhere after almost a year since the last big update. I started to think they gave up on this game. I didn't know what was happening with this game, and I wanted to jump back in and hopefully get some of those problems I had addressed, and they did this with this new update, in addition to adding all of this new content, these new weapons, new bosses, campaign bosses, changes to the Crucible with the last update. This game is definitely the best it has been since it has launched. Now, please take away the wait timers, please. That is still something that I'm just like, do I even want to hop back into this game if I have to wait for mobile game timers? But it is what it is. This game is not fully launched yet. It is in early access, but I think this is probably a great time to hop in and try the game out. I think it's only $20 or $30, so it's a lot cheaper and now actually has content to justify that price point, I would assume. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Please let me know down below in the comments if you guys want to give this game a try, if this is something you guys are interested in. Have you played the game before? And if you have, what is your feedback for the game? What did you not like, or what did you really like when you first played the game? But again, thank you guys for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe if you liked what you see here. For my returning viewers, thank you guys as always for the support. Please like this video if you liked the video. I'll see you in the next one. I hate my life. Lakers lost. They're out of the playoffs. LeBron might retire.